Hi, this is Catherine, and this is Taking Tea with Catherine. This is a spring blossom green tea, which is a green tea flavored with rose petals, safflower, marigold, mallow, I think. Let me see. Mallow blossoms. It's very pretty. And it's still spring, so this is very appropriate. And it's the first time I'm having green tea with my new electric kettle that actually has a setting for green tea. Not specifically for green tea, but for the temperature that is actually appropriate for green tea, because unlike black tea, other teas like green, white, oolong shouldn't actually hit boiling point. So this is nice. It's convenient. I know I could use a pot and watch it, but why? And the last kettle I had, which finally malfunctioned, I had at least 4 years, and as technology goes, that's a pretty long time to have an item nowadays. They don't make things like they used to. But anyway, so yes, it is Friday Reads, and let's talk about my week and my weekend, reading and beyond. So, I don't know, it's gotten a bit warmer now. Sadly, when it gets warmer in New York, often it also gets humid, and it seems like it got humid really quick. And even though it's not blazing hot out, it's warm. The temperatures are still the temperatures that I'm pretty okay with. The humidity, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? Like, can we not? So it does affect things a little bit. Doesn't mean I can't take a walk if I do plan to take a walk, but I took a walk last weekend. It was a very satisfying, long walk with a little bit of nature. Not as much as I'd like, but hey, I'll take what I can get at this point. And I need at least one good walk a week now. That's kind of my thing. I know I went for a while where I was going weeks without really going outside much, but I'm at the point where I realize that I am really falling out of shape. And yes, I exercise indoors, but I'm not disciplined very well. My main form of exercise is walking. And honestly, I do think that walking is good for my mental health and my actual thinking process. I do think that I am able to concentrate better, etc. once I've done walking. And I know that there are people who cannot walk at all and they still have pretty good mental faculties. I'm just saying that's kind of how I've operated over the years. So hopefully at some point I can walk this weekend so that my everything will be good and I'll have some good insights to share with you guys, maybe. And my reading has been enjoyable. I had nothing that I didn't like. I finished the last book. I had the overstory as well as a possible for this month, but it was really just a possible. Every time I do a TBR, I usually have at least 1 or 2 books that I say, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. But the overstory is one I would really like to read, but I'm just, there's so many other things I want to read that it's kind of being edged out. We'll see. I've heard good things about it. But I finished Mozart Starling, so this is a book that I planned for Springathon, so I'm a little late in that, but whatever. But I also had it as a TBR for the month, so mission accomplished. And it was quite good. As a bird book, it was good. As a little bit of a story about music and inspiration in Mozart, let's face it, it was very good. Learned a few things I didn't know, like the shape of Mozart's ear was different than the average shape of a human's ear inside the way it was shaped. So that could have affected his relationship with music. Who knows? But I also learned a lot about starlings. The whole thing about how a man released a bunch of starlings imported from Europe and thus changed the landscape of bird and wildlife in the United States. I'd already known, but it's good to read a little more about that. And the position of this writer who decided for her book to take in a very young starling and raise it and live with it, and she still lives with it apparently, was not because she was trying to be a cheerleader for starlings being in the United States. In fact, her stance is really that they shouldn't be here, but was more of just to learn about starlings on top of what she already knew about them, and to see how they live and how they may have affected Mozart, or how one may have affected Mozart, because Mozart had a starling for a few years. And it is interesting it's probably not a coincidence, but some of the music he did around the time, or even after, right after he had the Starling, which we don't know the name of. She gave it the name. The author gave it the name of Star, just to make it easy. May have been influenced by the bird and the bird song. So there's a lot of talk about bird song and animal communication and what its usage is, and musical theory, I guess. Some of it toward the end got a little bit philosophically, almost new agey, which I wasn't big on, so that's why it only hit a 4-star for me. But otherwise, it was really an enjoyable read. I like reading about birds anyway, and this was a bit of a happier story. I mean, I don't think Mozart's story is ever completely happy, but not as horrific as some lives were. So, it got me more curious about Mozart and makes me want to keep reading more about birds, which is good, because even though I don't have any upcoming, in my TBR upcoming bird books that I can think of, I'm still wanting more, and so I will find a way to fit in some more of my birdie books. So that was a success to me, which is good, because I think I mentioned this 100 times already on this channel, but that's one of the last books among a couple of books that I bought at Book Off before everything closed, and so I don't know, that puts it in a special place for me for some reason. And some of the books that I bought that day, I was able to, because I usually buy a number of books, I was able to bring home with me, and some I had left at the office thinking that I was going to be able to go back at least once. Haven't yet. If you've seen the state of my book collection, you know that I don't need any of them, but it's just, I always keep thinking it's like the ones that got away. But it's always nice to have something to look forward to. So that's one book. And another book that I just got last week, I showed you guys in my last Friday reads, in my little mini haul, was a book that I'd seen in Barnes & Noble many times. And did I buy this from Barnes & Noble also online? I think. No, I don't think it was this one. I buy so many books, I never know where I'm getting them from anymore. I bought at least one book, though. Might have been this one. Might have been this one. I am losing track of my life. But no, I know what I bought last week from Barnes & Noble. It was that sticker book. So, no, this was probably... Anyway, doesn't matter. I bought this book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. And I read it within an hour. It wasn't like a long book, and it's mostly pictures, and it was nice. It was a really nice book. I don't know if it's supposed to be for kids, adults, whatever. I didn't see it in the kids section necessarily. It had its own display when I saw it last year in Barnes & Noble. But I'm a bit of a cheapskate, and I think the original price was a bit more than I wanted to pay for a book that I knew was not very long. Even though, yes, the drawings are quite nice and the writing is quite nice. But, so I waited until I could find it for slightly cheaper price. And you know what? I got it. And it's beautiful. It's written, now this is an interesting thought. It's written in like a handwriting, like a script. And I often read over the past few years that script wasn't being taught. I think maybe it is now. But I'm not really, haven't asked any school-age children this question, but for at least a while, script wasn't really being taught in schools. Like, it was deemed unnecessary. I guess there were too many other things to, oh, this is good tea. It is very spring-like. I guess there were other things to teach kids that even when I was in, I guess, second grade, which is when they started teaching me, around 7 or 8 years old, teaching script or cursive. I used to not like it when we were learning that, but now I pretty much only write in script. I find it hard to print things out. So I was worried. I was thinking that now I wouldn't be able to be understood. Like if I wrote something in script that anyone, like, I don't know, 20 years younger than me wouldn't be able to read what I wrote down. Not that that's a problem, because I usually write in journals or stuff like that. But what if I wrote a letter? What if I did a handwriting letter? Anyway, I'm going off into tangents again. So when I was in school learning script, that we didn't have as much to learn with computers, that sort of thing. We did have a computer class, but it wasn't like it is now. So maybe they thought they had to edge out something, and I still think that script is worth it. But that's my opinion. But this writer and artist keeps to script, and it's beautiful, and it's just really about what the title says. It's these characters that find each other and talk and kind of help each other out with their words. Just beautiful pictures. And like this one. Sometimes I feel lost, said the boy. Me too, said the mole. But we love you, and love brings you home. So that's kind of nice. I mean, you know, it's all these little kind of inspiring little sweet things. It's not gonna, you know, change the universe, but it can be a nice thing to read, especially in these times, which is, you know, not necessarily always cheerful. One of my favorite things, too, is the mole is absolutely obsessed with cake. And, of course, the cake they show looks like a Victoria sponge, which is one of my favorite cakes ever. And I may one day attempt making one. I have a lot of the ingredients, but I just haven't been baking the past couple of weeks. But I love it. He goes up to one, and it's like just a tiny taste, and then this little guy eats the entire cake. So relatable right now. So I gave this 5 stars just because I really did enjoy the time I spent reading it, and I want to sit and read it numerous times, and that to me is a mark of a good book. Okay, so what do I have here? Oh yes, so now what am I currently reading? And I've gotten up to page 92, so I may end up finishing this weekend. And that is Agatha Christie, The Mystery of the Blue Train. This was my mystery pick of the month, my main mystery pick of the month, and so far so good. Just because I've seen so many adaptations, I usually know what's going to happen, or at least I kind of know. I don't always remember exactly who did it and why they did it, but I always have like a feeling when I'm reading it that I'm remembering things. So it gets to the point that I read it because I do enjoy the little insights that the writing has over the adaptations, and yeah, the wording can be just sometimes different, and you have to use more of your imagination, which I like. And just generally, I know that sometimes the movies and the television versions of things are not exactly 100% true to the book, just because, for creative reasons. So sometimes it's nice to see what the book actually said. And that really is enough. So, I mean, I might only have that book to keep me going this weekend. When I say that, I mean, I possess many books. I mean, I may only read that book this weekend and be fine because I may have other things to do. But maybe I'll take a walk. But honestly, I know myself, I may end up blowing through the rest of this book really quickly, and then I will want to have other books. And I got a book that I meant to mention in my TBR, but I hadn't received it yet. But now I have it, and I may just start it before June begins. So maybe it's not entirely a June TBR. I don't know. But it's almost the end of May, so does it really matter? It is the end of May, let's face it. Okay, so this is a book I've been waiting for some time, and that is The Jane Austen Society by Natalie Jenner. Isn't it pretty? Isn't it just kind of goes with me today? Very kind of spring / summery looking. I haven't read it yet, so I'm not going to say entirely what it's about, but the deal is basically it's post-war in England, in the area where Jane Austen lived in her last years of life. The cottage at Chawton, which I have not been to, which is so sad. I've been to Bath, which I know Jane Austen lived in Bath, but I haven't been to this place, which is still in existence. The original place that she grew up, Steventon. Goodness sakes, I can't remember these things. The original place is gone. I mean, the geographical location is still there, but the actual rectory, whatever, where she grew up, is gone, which is so sad because that really should have been preserved. But what did they know at the time? And, you know, it's not that important, I guess. But the whole point of this, I think, is to preserve her last place of dwelling, not where she died, but she, you know, basically lived here at the end of her life and did a lot of her writing here. And so it's apparently people getting together and keeping Jane Austen's legacy intact, and a variety of different characters. I don't know much about it because I didn't start it yet. I only read the synopsis, but it was enough for me I mean, pretty much any book now that says Jane Austen on it is going to be enough for me, even if it's bad. But I really do like this. I think it's kind of historical fiction, but I'm not sure if it's entirely based on real people or not. Haven't figured that out yet. And I should find that out. But even if it wasn't, but I think the Jane Austen Society is a real thing, so it has to be somewhat based. Either way, it's still kind of historical fiction because Jane Austen was a real person, and where she lived was a real place. So even if it's based partially on fact, it is historical fiction, which I love. And I really do, because, a lot of people like to read World War II books. I'm not saying I don't like it at all, but I don't gravitate toward World War II books. I really don't gravitate towards Civil War books, but that's another story. I love history, and I like Foyle's War, the TV show, Foyle's War, very much. So not against at all. I'm not against these kind of things, but I'm just not, it's not what I first go for. Because I know I was hearing often on BookTube and beyond that when people talk about historical novels, they say, oh, I read historical fiction, but I want to read something besides World War II books. I only see World War II books for historical fiction. I was like, wow, there's so much more out there. So much more. But post-war England, for me, post-World War II England, also World War I, but post-World War II England for me is, for some reason, something that I tend to enjoy reading about. I think partially because one of my favorite books of all time, which I talk about incessantly on this channel, is 84 Charing Cross Road, and that starts, I think, in 1949, which is a couple of years post-war, but it still was. I mean, it was toward the end of the reign of George VI, so to me it kind of falls any time between the end of World War II and when Elizabeth II ascends the throne, or whatever they call it. That is, to me, post-war England mostly, because once it gets well into the 50s, things change a little bit. But this was still a time of picking up the pieces. War had really affected, well, all of Europe, really, and a lot of the world, but it had really ravaged parts of England as well, and everyone lost something. And there was that kind of recovery, which was interesting, how it affected society in general, but also the rationing. It didn't end. It didn't end until, I think it might have even still been around when Queen Elizabeth was queen. I mean, not for too much longer, but that's crazy, because supposedly they were the, part of the victors, you would think, but it's just how it affected things. So I don't know why I find rationing so interesting, maybe especially now when, I mean, honestly, so far I'm not really doing without when it comes to food. I pretty much, I mean, except for my clotted cream, which I have to make myself. I'm such a tangent about that. But except for that, I really do not have issues still getting a hold of the foods that I want. But you do hear things about meat maybe a little more expensive now and hard to come by, and certainly the grocery stores do have a little less of it. And I still do eat meat. So that was always one of the things that people at that time period had to deal with. So I know this book may not even get into that, but it just to me, it's just a reminder of the time. And so that's one reason I want to read about it, but also because, hello, Jane Austen. And I know Jane Austen July is coming up, and I don't know if there's going to be a category that this book would fit into, but I don't know if I can wait. It's just calling to me. And I've seen a few people who got this early on BookTube, some of my favorite BookTubers. You know who you are. And if you're like, I am a BookTuber and I have a channel where I show Jane Austen Society, yeah, you're probably one of my favorites. But anyway, so I've heard so far good things about this book. So this has been, to me, as far as Jane Austen related books, I've been so spoiled, and there's more. I've seen there's more coming up that I haven't even had a hold of yet, that haven't come out yet, really. So Miss Austen, the other Bennet sister, and the Jane Austen Society. I mean, I just can't believe it. But anyway, so that's my plans for the weekend. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm also I have a thought of, in my possible perambulations this weekend, you like that word? I have a thought that I might try to see if the playground near me is open. Not because I want to go to the playground. I don't. Because I don't. But not so much for the playground itself, but for the little free library. Because I would like to see if it is possible for me to put some books in there. I have so many books that I already showed you guys on can't say the word, unhauled, that I still have sitting around in a bag here because I can't take them anywhere. So maybe I'll bring a book with me when I take a walk and pass by there and see. Because then if it's closed, I'm only carrying one book. It's not a big deal. I'm not carrying a sack and then taking a walk. Right? I am so practical in some ways. So anyway, that is my week, and that is the weekend. And I hope you've enjoyed. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I spoke of, and if you like them as well, or if you didn't care for them, or what you think. You'll hear more about the Agatha Christie book in my upcoming TM Mystery, I think. I have other videos I'm planning too that are not just wrap-ups and TBRs, etc. So this is Catherine at Taking Tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea and book-filled day, and apparently cat hair, because I feel cat hair on me. Yay! Bye.